So I thought we'll start out the discussion on kind of liquid cooling. First and foremost, just at a very basic level, what is liquid cooling when it comes to data centers, and how does it differ from what we talk about from the traditional approaches to keep kind of data centers not overheating?
Thank you, Shailesh, first of all, for having me. And to keep it really simple, because I see a lot of people are a little bit afraid or shy of going liquid cooling because that sounds super sophisticated. It's not rocket science, by the way. We've done it for more than 12 years at large scale. So I think we've proven it together with clients, and we've done it because clients wanted it. The key thing basically is to get liquid, and we use water for that, direct to the chip. You heard direct to the chip cooling, which means that there are small pipes in the server infrastructure. You put it directly where the heat is generated, which is the GPUs, the memory, everything else. Ideally, you get to 100% water-cooled system, so all the heat's extracted directly there, put into the water. The water then goes out into what we call the secondary loop. The facility guys call it the primary loop, so it just depends on which angle you're looking at this. And then you put it either through a chilling system, which would be wasting system, or you use free cooling, which puts it on the roof or nearby in order to cool it down again. So there's no extra cooling needed for that. Or even better, you reuse the heat. So you put it into something where we had a discussion about shrimp farming and other stuff earlier in the morning, or you use your campus heating system and inject it in there. So that's basically how it works.
Got it. And with how new is it, or how kind of evolved has it been? Is it something that in terms of its adoption is you would say in early stages, it's kind of more mature? What is your assessment of liquid cooling in terms of technology, where it is right now?
Well, I would say it's very mature right now.
Okay.
There are still some interesting challenges like NVIDIA and others are putting to us with kind of taking temperature ranges down in components and have them dissipate even more heat and so on, that we solve with a lot of engineering power and experience. So that's still a challenge out there, but the base technology is proven, right? As I said, we've done it for more than 12 years reliably out there with scale in all different sizes also. It's not just for large scales, it's also for kind of single rack deployments, if you choose the right technology to do that. So that's out there and proven. Actually, you can go back and say, and I've been doing that for a couple of years as well, it's been there before, right? Some remember the mainframe times, yeah, and some of these systems have been water cooled as well, right? So I would say it's very mature.
Very mature, got it. Again, I'd welcome questions from the audience. If people have them, you can raise your hands and we'll get a mic to you. Are there any questions related to this? I have my own, but yeah, sorry. Okay. Is there a mic here? Could you get? Yeah, sorry. If you could introduce yourself and keep the questions short, then we can just get through them. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about you said the liquid cooling now is mature, but the density is different. We are looking at 130 kilowatts, 600 in the future. How do you see that happening? I assume the whole infrastructure, pipes, etc., everything has to change. How do you see the Lenovo will tackle it in the future?
That's a good question, which is kind of leading into one of the other topics we pre-discussed as well, is kind of what's the impact on the data center side of it, and how does it integrate into that because of these heat densities? Let me just kind of repeat a couple of the data points you mentioned so we all have the same understanding. I think we're coming from an age of an air-cooled data center where not too long before 10, 12 kilowatts for a rack were reasonable or maybe already at the edge. We are now quickly, even just before we go to GPUs, we are talking about 50 kilowatts a rack. Yeah, that is really kind of probably the boundary condition, and some of the equipment providers may or may not agree of air cooling in a reasonable way. So when you go beyond that, you need to go liquid. There's no other way. Yeah, or you need to reduce density, and then you waste a lot of your facility, which you won't want to do, and commercially it's not viable either. So from that angle onwards, it's only liquid. And the current trend already is like a CPU-only dense compute rack is probably in the range of 80 kilowatts today, conservatively speaking. If you talk about a GPU rack with a good density and a water-cooled environment, otherwise you won't achieve that, you're easily way above 100, 120 today, maybe 140 with current technology. And we already see that today, scaling a little bit into the future, what's cooking, yeah, literally, that we go into the ranges you mentioned. So that's happening. In order to accomplish that, to answer the question on that side as well, we need the integration from the facility and the IT side to become much, much stronger. And that's, if you want to take a gold nugget out of that discussion, and grab me at the booth later on if you want to continue that, is one of the key success factors for the last 12 years is get facility and IT on the same table early, sometimes gently, sometimes forcing it a little bit more gently, to have that conversation early on. That breaks down so much barriers and misconceptions and stuff like that, and that's why I'm here as well, thank you, in order to make that possible. I think the technology is there. The technology is there.
Got it. This kind of brings me to a question on implementation, right? I think you kind of alluded to that, IT facilities working together. From an implementation standpoint, how different is it from air cooling? Is it very different in terms of your architecture, design? How do you kind of implement something like this?
I think from a pure kind of component perspective, it's not so much different. It's the same kind of, you still have servers, you still have power into them. Yes, the cooling's done differently because it doesn't go via air, it goes via liquid connection. It comes on top of that, but there's 1 or 2 connections more per rack in order to achieve that. That's not super sophisticated to do that. And you need to integrate, of course, the monitoring of the liquid cooling system in your total data center, monitoring of the system and stuff. But again, that's proven technology that's been out there. And again, if you look into the industry a little bit outside IT, a lot of industries have been using water cooling for long range already. Yeah, it's just fairly new, maybe to IT again. But from an implementation perspective, that's proven. And what we also do in the way we deploy these systems is we have our service guys come with the systems. They make sure both the facility side and the IT side work together so that you get a system up. There's not just the IT running, but it's also the plumbing. It's a little bit more sophisticated than that, excuse my wording, yeah, to work with the IT system because both systems need to work in order to provide value.
Got it. Any questions? Or I can keep going. Yeah, sorry. There's a question like that.
You mentioned over 12 years experience, ratio of immersion cooling to direct to chip, and where do you forecast the future? And do you like two-phase direct to chip cooling?
It's a multi-part question. Yeah, let me tackle 2 things separately. The one is a view on immersion, yeah, and the second one is two-phase and maybe future technologies. First of all, I think the trend of immersion coming to the market is showing that there's more competition, so there's a broader market. So I welcome that. I think it just proves the point that this is a mature technology or adoption of technology in the market, and having competition with different approaches is very good. I would dissect, in my view, that immersion has some challenge in the way you would service a system because you would drain it and so on. But if you have an application case where that doesn't matter, because you're just putting it there once, you never care again. It's a large-scale, very homogeneous system, staying on the same stuff forever, probably a technology that's viable for that. If you look at more sophisticated, kind of higher demanding environments where you need more serviceability on one side, higher reliability maybe out of that, and you also need to cope with higher densities and heat dissipation, like the GPUs getting denser and hotter at the same time. I think you're also in an immersion thread quickly getting to the point where you need to direct the fluid and convection is not sufficient anymore. And as soon as you start to do that, you're a little bit back to why don't I put it into a pipe in the first place again? So I think it's viable to look at that, but the application case is different. And on the two-phase stuff, we're looking interested into that. It comes with a cost, and I think there may or may not be a break-even point for that in the future to do it already. For some of the internal cooling loop systems we do today, we actually use two-phase cooling or two-phase liquids and materials in that already today. For broader deployment, there's going to be a break-even point.
I had a question related to sustainability because that is kind of the big question right now with data centers, their energy use, and kind of if you look at the projections, it's just going up, up, up. How does this kind of play into that in terms of the energy consumption by a data center? What does it do? I'm assuming it improves it, but could you speak to that?
Yeah, let me maybe put some numbers out there first. So because it's easy to speak about it. Yes, it's going to be better, but how much and why? Again, back to some basics. It's no rocket science, but maybe entertaining at least. If I were to ask you to guess how much fans take in service these days, probably most of you would say maybe single-digit percentage, something like that. You're very wrong, I'm afraid. Yeah, if you look at like even a one-use CPU server, not even talking GPU service, really well loaded, like we use in an HPC or environment, you would easily see 20% plus, and it's more going to 30% of the total server power going to fans. So you're wasting 20 or 30% of the energy, the operating cost, on moving hot air. I don't think anyone's paying you for that, yeah, but you are. So that's one thing. And if you go to liquid cooling, you basically get rid of fans. You're saving 20, 30% of your energy bill instantly. That's one point. Second point, as you're moving a lot of hot air with these expensive fans, you also need the cooling equipment in the data center to move from hot air back to cooler air. And that's typically what's reflected in the PUE, and there's a lot of debate of how you measure that correctly. I'll not get into that. But the difference between a mostly water-cooled versus a mostly air-cooled data center, and again, opinions vary, is probably somewhere between a 1.1 or better on an air-cooled data center, 1.4 worse on an air-cooled data center. So you have a 30% plus difference there again. And if you now put this together, you have a factor of 30% savings on the fans, and on top of that, for the total bill of that, you have another 30% savings. So you can do the math, and you easily get to 40 up to 50% total energy savings by moving to liquid.
Got it.
And that, depending on your CO2 footprint, then reflects on your sustainability story. And the first thing is reduce energy consumption.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
I think
there's a question.
Andy.
Yeah.
So we often hear criticism of the amount of water that's being used for AI systems. Can you explain how your closed loop water systems actually minimize the amount of water that's used in AI inference and
Basically, water.
Water usage. Yeah, that's a good point, Andy. And then there's a good reminder I wanted to mention as well, because there's a lot of misconception about that. So thank you for the good question. Because most people think, oh, it's water cooling, so we're going to waste a lot of water, right? We're going to take water from the outside and cool the system down and then drain it somewhere, and there's probably bad stuff in the water as well, so we can't reuse the water. I think it's very wrong, so let me correct that. The way we design the systems with the closed loops is basically there is no water usage for that. So you fill the pipes within the server system that's connected to the facility, and because there's no water leaking, you don't need to put more water in it once the water is in there. And also on the facility side, even if you move it up to the roof, if you use high water temperatures, that's why we call it warm water cooling, yeah, you don't even need hybrid coolers on the roof to cool it down again, but you can stay within that. Yeah, so you have a 45 degree into the server, 55 out of the server, and 55 you can typically still cool down in most places in Europe, especially in Scandinavia, even with free cooling down again. So there's no water usage there. I know it's done differently in some of the places in the US, yeah, and that's where some of the misconception comes from. But again, maybe one tick in the mark on what Europe does differently there.
Got it. And there was a question there. Sorry, I will go there and then we'll come back. Sorry, I'm making you run from one and then.
We just make you
Exactly.
do some extra steps.
Yeah. We just have a minute and a half. Sorry. So yeah.
Yes,
quickly.
it's a short one, I think. Hi, I'm Annie. I work at ARM. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on building these big data centers in cool places versus warm places. Like from your point of view, how does that affect the system? And is there a better option out of the two?
I think the better option is always difficult to answer. What we try to do is recognizing the customer need that you cannot always put all the stuff into a cool place. And there are only so many cool places in this world, right? And that's an easy solution, yeah, and to go to a cool place if you can afford that from a geopolitical perspective, from a data. We had a discussion about latencies and moving data and the energy for that as well. So we do support that. But we also want to enable the clients to put stuff into warmer environments. And that's why we really put a lot of engineering effort into 45 degrees as an inlet temperature, which is not that easy to achieve. Yeah. And not because we want to enable you to take a shower at the end of the day from the water. Yeah. But really enable the heat reuse and the use of free cooling, whatever you have in your ecosystem locally, to do that in, I would say, a lot more places than just the cold places. If you can do the warm places, you can do the cold places easily and more reliably as well.
Got it.
Good question. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Sorry, but Andres will be available, I'm sure, outside as well.
I'm around, find me.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I think we'll be having a short break now.
Thank you for having me.